Okay, it's episode 3, week 3 even technically. This is Monday on the 3rd week of doing this. I think we've made some good progress. As you can see, and you'll see a little bit in the video, the engine is partially assembled. I'm going to start getting the engine bay ready for putting it in. I'm waiting on some parts right now. So we're going to do some kind of tidying up, probably some wiring that's laying on the ground that needs to be routed, and that'll probably lead us to under the dash. I have a Gretty E-Manage Blue that I need to get in there, so I need to figure out how all that gets wired behind the dash, and needs a new dash anyways. So that's what we'll probably move towards, and we'll wait on parts. I took the flywheel to the machine shop, and basically the factory one's already really lightened from Suzuki. So the method that they would have to use to lighten it any further would require quite a bit of CNC machining to take it off the face between the mounting points. And they said, which I kind of suspected, that we may only take off about 2 pounds. The problem with that is that there's quite a bit of cost involved with setting up their CNC mill for something that they haven't worked on before. So all in all, they said it'd be close to about $600, which is about the same price as an aluminum flywheel. And even though I said I didn't want to do that just because of the weight, I talked to a couple other people that had ran the aluminum flywheel and had some experience with it, and I think I ended up convincing myself to get an aluminum flywheel. So I did purchase one, and I'm just waiting on it to arrive. So hopefully that doesn't take too long, and we can get that assembled with the transmission, which is supposedly shipping today. So really excited to get that. And this morning I wasn't too excited to work on the car. Just been, the truck's been broken down, so I worked on that all day yesterday, and I'm pretty wore out from that. But just getting out here in the morning and just talking about what's next for the car is I'm already a little bit excited to work on it this morning. So hopefully I can keep up that excitement and continue to work on this through the rest of the week. We'll see how it goes. Got the carbon timing cover bolted up. Took a little bit of fiddling on some of these screws. I mean, it's handmade carbon covers, so I expect some shrinkage and stuff. It wasn't really that bad. Just a little bit of fiddling, and it finally went on. I think it looks good. I cut these holes out myself because I wanted to be able to see the blue timing covers, or cam gears. I don't know, just personal preference, I guess, but I still wanted some sort of cover on it, so nothing major would get stuck in there. So hopefully that little gap doesn't cause, I don't think it'll cause any issues. It's behind the grill and stuff. One thing I forgot to do though is that hole down there is actually too small for my crank pulley. So I gotta try and drill it out with another hole saw. And I'm gonna try and do it on the car. There's this lip here that I think will guide this hole saw. It's almost like a perfect fit. So I'm gonna give that a shot. Managed to do that perfectly without cutting the timing belt. It's important to note, I think, that it's just my crank pulley that will not work with this timing cover. It's meant to use the stock one, but I've got a lightweight aluminum one, so it's just a little bit bigger on that hub. Alright, so this is the body harness for the engine bay, coming from behind the dash. I rewrapped it not that long ago. It's in pretty good shape, actually. All the connectors were in good shape. So I just need to route this through this hole here. I'm gonna get I got some grommets for these areas, kind of similar to this one that I put on. So yeah, I'm gonna route this through the body into the engine bay, get ready for the engine wiring harness. I've got these, well, I got more than just these three fasteners with zip ties on them to hold the harness to the body. So that's what I'm going to be using. Look what just came in. It's a Thursday night, and I'm so excited to get this. I just had to show you and do a little bit of work on it, you know, so I can get a little ahead and get this installed. I did open it already, and I did weigh it. It does weigh 6.5 pounds. Wow. How's that look? Oh yeah, I already installed the pilot bearing too. Just got too excited, I almost forgot to turn the camera on. That's awesome. Says action clutch on it, but I'm pretty sure this is made by ASCO. In fact, I called ASCO and asked them if action clutch was rebranding. They confirmed. So
Awesome. I want to get the clutch on there and make sure that it fits with no problems. Let's do that now. This clutch is center force, like dual purpose. So it's got like an organic material on one side, on the transmission side it's organic material, and on the engine side it's got this kind of ceramic puck style design. Supposedly this has heavier duty springs in it, and then it's got these let's see, this is the transmission side, so that's the engine side. So yeah, and it's got these weights on it with the heavier duty springs. These weights supposedly help it to disengage, makes the pedal feel a little bit lighter, supposedly. But I've also heard that they rattle like crazy. So that combined with the aluminum flywheel, and I imagine this is going to be a really noisy transmission. Good grab on there. Look how much those fingers compressed. They're almost flat. That might not be a good thing. I'm gonna have to test it, because to be able to release the clutch, we have to push down on these fingers with the throw out bearing, bushing, whatever you want to call that thing. And there's not a lot of room to really get down on this, so let's see. Alright, so I'll show you how I tested it. I just have it on the press here, and I found the throw out bearing and just put it on there and pressed it down. I pressed it down until right when it hit the clutch disc, and then let off just a hair, and got a screwdriver, flathead screwdriver down here, and I can move the clutch disc around pretty easily. Yeah, you should be able to see that little rivet right there moving. Yeah, so I think we got enough movement. Hopefully, we'll probably have to adjust the clutch pedal and the cable just right, but I think it's gonna work out just fine. Well, the wiring in the engine bay was probably the easy part. Like I said, it's I'd already wrapped it, and it kind of can only go in one way, so this is gonna be the hard part. I've got the this is what the factory ECU normally looks like, but there's codes on them that means different things, different areas. So the i4 ECU for these is actually from Japan on the Cultus model. They had a higher red line due to some other modifications that the engine had, like higher compression pistons and cams. They had a factory header. So a lot of the things that I have, this factory ECU is already kind of going to account for. One other addition that this ECU has is a NOx sensor. So that's going to be something that we need to do before the engine goes in. We need to add we need to drill and tap the block for the NOx sensor so that we can add that functionality to this engine. I think it'll be beneficial to have that. The ECU is going to be looking for it. And then we've got this Ready E-Manage. This is kind of an old way of tuning with like this piggyback that interrupts the signal, and you can adjust things on the fly, but it does also have a tuning software that's available for it to make changes. This was on a Swift when I bought it, so there really shouldn't be too much that we have to do. and it's already been wired into the factory harness, so that's nice. That takes out a lot of the work, which is why I bought it. Just I knew it would save me some work and be able to tune it as it is now, and also be able to do more things in the future should I decide to change anything up. We've got the ability to adjust that. So let's take a look at this harness here and see how much of it needs to be cleaned up and retaped, and if there's any connections that need to be repaired. Okay, gotta go for today, but I'll show you a little bit closer some of these things that need repaired, where they've been spliced in. All right, so see how that one is exposed. That would definitely cause problems later down the road, and you don't want to be diagnosing no start issues or weird operating issues that have to do with wiring. So we'll clean that up now so we don't have to worry about it later, hopefully. I unwrapped all the tape, so we're going to tape this up with some really nice like fabric electrical tape for the interior of the vehicle. We'll clean up some of this other old tape as well. But we'll get this looking nice. Just takes a little bit of time. Looks much nicer. Gotta get more tape for this side, but got all those connections soldered up and heat shrunk, and that way I'm not hopefully not dealing with any electrical issues in the future. Can you believe that took about an hour just today? Not to mention last few times I've been working on it about half hour each. So about, I would say 2.5 hours just to get where we're at. Wiring is tedious. Still got to do a little more, lay it in the car behind the dash, get it out to the firewall. But for now I'm going to get this knock sensor threaded into the block. becoming quite tedious, and I need to order some things to repair it anyways. I think I need to take a break from that because I'm kind of getting discouraged. I think wiring does that to just about everybody. Plus, like I said, this is Memorial Day weekend, so I have 3 days, so I want to make the most of it. I'm going to focus on getting the engine in the car. I don't want the whole episode to be just me wiring the whole time. That would be pretty boring. So we're going to move on from here, and I'll get back to the wiring harness later. All right, so yeah, I confirmed that this is the spot for the knock sensor. So we're going to drill that out, figure out what thread pitch this is and how deep we got to go. It's pretty easy. So let's use this end of it to... It's like 12 millimeter. Here's a 10 millimeter nut. It doesn't seem like it's pipe thread or anything because it's not really getting any tighter as I go down. So first we got M10 by 1.25 tap. That's what we're going to use to tap it. We're going to measure out our 12 millimeter depth on the drill bit. Punch. There we go. See, there's a nice center hole now. Yep, perfect. Lubricate it again. There we go. Knock sensor's done. Okay, before I get started on putting the engine in here, there's one thing I wanted to do last time that I just never did, and now I've got the opportunity to do it since the engine's out. These mounts are all pretty dang soft. So I wanted to replace them with polyurethane, but well, nobody really makes polyurethane for these, and doing polyurethane on all three would be pretty stiff, and not that this is a daily driver, but even on the short drives it would be on, it would probably be pretty uncomfortable and annoying, being that there's not really a whole lot of insulation and sound deadening in the cab, and it would vibrate and be kind of, just really annoying. So I'm going to do just this rear one, since that's where a lot of the torque is going to go through, and since it's connected directly to the cab here. I'm going to do this with a method that's a lot of people use, and I'm just going to fill the cavities with windshield adhesive. So I can show you what I've got. See, there's a tube of this right here. Get this from Mercedes, or really anywhere should have it, but there's the part number for you. Most Mercedes dealerships should have that in stock. I don't really know the price on it, sorry. But that's what I'm going to use. Alright, so there it is. We're going to try and stuff these voids as much as we can with some of this windshield adhesive. there's the transmission that I had built. The second transmission I had built, rather. I don't know if you can see it, but there is limited slip differential in there. Yeah, so short ratio gears, well, OEM available short ratio gears, because you can get custom ones made. They're just very expensive. Like, we're talking $3,000 to $4,000 for a set. This uses a 3-cylinder first gear, which is actually it helps with fuel economy, but in this case it helps us go a little bit longer in first gear, a little bit higher speed, but you reduce torque by doing that, which isn't necessarily a bad thing in this, because these have a problem with spinning tires on takeoff anyways. Now, obviously, limited slip differential should help with that, but we're going to further eliminate with that with the first gear change. But what also that first gear change does is it puts us closer to second gear. That way, when we do shift out of it, we don't have a huge RPM drop, because second gear is actually the only gear in this that you can't change. There's nothing available that's any different from any other transmissions, years, makes, models that will fit in this. So we're stuck with second gear the way it is, and second gear kind of sucks. So we're gonna use first gear to get as close to second gear as we can, and then we've got a third, fourth, and fifth gear in this transmission from, well, a Suzuki Swift GT. But what makes this one different is that in the U.S. market, well, North American market, third, fourth, and fifth gear in the Swift GT was actually exactly the same as the 3-cylinder Geo Metros. But everywhere else got special third, fourth, and fifth gearing for the GTs. Again, it was all closer. It kind of made it feel a lot more sporty. And I don't really know why for the North American market they decided not to do that. But I've kind of corrected that. I purchased these from overseas, got them put in this transmission, and then, like I said, then we swapped to a 3-cylinder first gear rather than the Swift first gear from 4 cylinders. And then I put a 4.39 to 1 final drive ratio in this compared to the 4:10 that comes in the Swift GTs. There's other ratios available, it's like 356 and 373 and 410 and something else. And so the 439 is kind of the lowest ratio gearing you can get in for the differentials in these in stock form without having something, again, custom made and very expensive. So you put this in the calculator and it really helps out with the RPM drop between your shifts, which for this engine, you're making power, right? You start making your max torque and power right around 4,000 RPM. So we want to stay up there as much as we can. We don't want to drop below that. And then when you get cams like mine where they're making a lot of power above 5,000 RPM and all the way up to 8,500 RPM or so, we want to use the final drive to keep the RPMs high, and we don't want to drop below the usable power band. And that's also why we're doing a lightened flywheel to help it spin up quicker, because we want to get right to the power and we want to stay in it. well, my phone didn't quite record the last bit there, but I was making such good progress, I just decided to start putting the engine in the car right now, because I got some steam going forward and I don't want to break that, and that's part of the reason why I stopped doing the wiring for now, because I was just losing that steam, so I just had to switch off and do something else. So yeah, I got the engine and transmission assembled together. I think you're going to see that. I think that's in the recording that I did. But yeah, I started lifting it into the car, and well, it stopped recording. But I'm going to show you kind of how I like to put these engines in and transmissions in. I've done it a couple times, and this, for me, seems to be the best way. So I'll switch the camera here. All right, so I got the hoist. I like to put a jack between the legs of the hoist, and I usually jack up the car, and then I slide the legs all the way under until they're under the control arms, and then that usually centers the engine right over the engine bay perfectly. And I'll start to lower it down, and then I'll actually lower the car onto, I'll use the control arms to sit on the hoist, and then the jack I slide under the engine and transmission. And when I let this down, usually when my straps are over the main part of the engine, the tail end of the transmission likes to hang down, which is perfect because I usually just rest it on the leg of the hoist once again. I'll stick like a board or a couple 2x4s underneath it to help level it out, and that way when the tail end is sitting on the boards, the front starts to lean forward, and I can use the transmission pan as a pivot point to line it up perfectly. So when I do that, I usually start with the front mount first, because once that's in, everything else pretty much lines up. Once that's in, I get the jack underneath the transmission on the tail end, and I jack that up until I can get the front mount lined up. And while you're doing this, I mean, you're still going to need to move the engine around and stuff, but you got quite a bit of movement here while you're dangling from this. So once that's done, use the jack it up to line up the front one, and then once that's connected, you can lower the jack down and jack off the back half of the case right here, and you can start to jack the back end up, and it's perfectly lined up, and it just comes up underneath this mount here. Usually I leave this part of it off until I'm right about here, and then I'll stick this on and just jack it up until it meets perfectly. And then you've got these two bolts that connect that U bracket to the bracket on the transmission. And I go up from underneath and screw these in, and then tighten the nut on top, or I guess it's actually on bottom because these thread into that mount. And then I tighten the nut on the bottom, it cinches it all together, then you're done. Then you can disconnect it, you can pull the jack out, jack the car up, and then you can slide your whole hoist out. That's how I like to get it in. And as you can see, it's mostly in, went in pretty easy, didn't scratch anything, so goes in pretty quick. And there it is. Finally back in, back to where I was 6 months ago, almost exactly where I was. Transmission looks great in there. I do have a new fuel rail coming for this, so I'll get that swapped out shortly. Still a lot to do. Gotta get that wiring buttoned up so I can get this all plugged in and tested with the ECU and see if I can get it started. make sure that there's nothing wrong with that. I do have to, there's some other stuff I have to do before, new CVs, CV axles. I gotta get those in before I start it up. That way I can fill up the transmission and shift through the gears, make sure that's all good. So there's a lot to do before then, but it's coming along. And I think that I'm going to call that the end of episode 3. I think that's a good stopping point. I'm going to work on it some more this Memorial Day weekend and record some more, but I think this is going to be the end of episode 3.